I... yes, well, as most of you know, I'm a huge fan of Macross. In fact, there is no anime better as far as Macross is concerned. And I'm talking the original SDF Macross, the TV series, the movie, Macross Plus, to a certain extent, Macross Frontier, which was a definite improvement on what actually followed. Now, Macross does have its bad moments, or bad decades, I might actually put into perspective. We have Macross 2, which was kind of mediocre as far as it goes, to the point that even the developers of Macross even acknowledged that it had absolutely nothing to do with the Prime universe. Then we have Macross 7. The least said about Macross 7, probably the better. What surprises me is that the studio new had the audacity, or was it Samurai Studios? I can't remember the two anymore. I'm just so angry about it, decided it would be worthwhile making 3 movies and an OVA series based on the travesty that was Macross 7. Then for a while they gave up on Macross, and we thought we would never ever see it again until we actually saw Macross 0, which was basically a story about Roy Foker's origins, which I think was absolutely wonderful. It was actually on a par with Macross Plus, which to date is still one of the best OVAs ever created. Then we move on to Macross Frontier, which was okay. I enjoyed it. I actually quite enjoyed it. It had its faults, it had its flaws, it was very modern. But I can cope with modern if it's bringing a new generation of Macross fans into the fray. Just like I can cope with Doctor Who being modern if it's introducing new fans into the Doctor Who series. I have absolutely no problem with this. 10 years pass. Again, it's been, yeah, believe it or not, it's been at least probably 8-9 years since we've seen Macross on the screens again. I couldn't believe it, because I've only really just caught up with Macross Frontier. So that's how behind I was on it. Now, please do not underestimate my fangasming over Macross. I actually, to a point that I've actually still got the very first mini book that I bought. It's about this big, with the final sequence of Macross, the Macross Do You Remember Love movie, and $300 on the Macross Gold book, which I swear is going to be buried with me. Sorry, that's what's going to happen. But anyway, beside the point. Macross Delta comes out, and already I'm having my doubts when I start seeing the previews. It looks very fantasy. It looks very, well, how do I describe it? The Final Fantasy cartoon series. I can't remember the name of it. It reminds me of that to a certain degree, and which was very disappointing in itself. And from the review, from the previews I got, I was promised Valkyrie on Valkyrie action, which is always awesome. And for those of you wondering what I'm talking about, I'm not talking about lesbians in armor. I'm talking about robot on robot fights. Okay, that's what we call the robots, the mecha in Macross, Valkyries. Okay, so anyway, I already am starting to have my doubts, and I expressed my doubts to the community, and the community's more hyped up about it than against it at that point. But nobody's listening to me. That's fine. I haven't seen it yet. I can't make any prejudgments on the trailer footage, but the trailer is supposed to impress me, and I'm not impressed. So a few months pass by, and I finally today get to watch the very first episode of Macross Delta. And it starts off pretty promisingly in the first 3 minutes. Starts off, in the first 2 minutes. I'll say the first 2 minutes. Starts off very promising in the first 2 minutes, when it explains the dangers of space travel, particularly for the Macross Delta fleet. They've come across a virus called the Vara, which makes them violent. Which probably has some bearing on the origins of the Zentradi. That would be a very interesting take on the story. However, this is where it gets back into Macross 7 territory, when they've developed a Valkyrie team possessed entirely of idol singers. Now, those of you who probably remember Macross 7 will probably understand why I have a problem with this approach. Okay, now admittedly they're not pilots in this show. They're basically like companions, like idol singer Pokemon or whatever, if you want to put it in that respect. But that it in no way excuses the travesty that this has become. It literally has turned itself into Sailor Moon. Now, I've got nothing against Sailor Moon. I actually like Sailor Moon. But Macross is not Sailor Moon. It's not magical. It's not fantasy. It is science fiction. It is space opera. And for some reason, the writers seem to have shat upon the legacy of Macross Frontier. Macross Frontier, music introduction actually was very loyal to the original concept. Here we've gone back to Macross 2 and Macross 7, where music is just basically it. Music wins the war. Totally misunderstanding the entire concept, the power of the message behind the music, behind the songs that made Lin Min Mei basically the winner of the war. We were talking about a culture that literally had no culture, and is introduced to culture, was introduced to music. It wasn't just the music that saved that won the war in the original SDF Macross. It was our culture. It was our entertainment. It was the fact that male and females lived amongst each other. They mated. There was a lot more going on than just music with the original series, and the writers of the new series in Macross seem to have forgotten what Macross was originally about, and it's very, very disappointing. Now, no, I'm sorry. I guess I'm going to have to sit down and watch it just so that I can finish writing my thesis on Macross. But this is such a disappointing entry so far. Episode 1 is supposed to encapsulate me. It's supposed to capture me. It took me at least 13 years to actually watch episode 2 of Macross 7 after watching Macross 7 episode 1. And even then I struggled through that. I struggled through that. And I got a feeling it's going to be exactly the same with Macross Delta. Is the animation any good? Well, it depends on what you think is good animation. It reminds me of 90s animation. Even the CGI reminds me of 90s CGI animation. I remember those things. I remember those days. It's a practical disappointment on the legacy that is one of my favourite animes of all time. Macross deserves better. It can be written better. It reminds me of the day that Macross, that Gundam actually went down the Gundam wing route and forgot completely about the UC wars, Char's counterattack and that. It went into side stories rather than actual historical stories. It reminds me of those times. And this is really, really forgettable. And what's saddening to me is that Macross 7 and Macross Delta is a part of this ongoing lore. And it's going to be a legacy that's going to be encapsulated in the Macross lore. Macross Plus is a testament to storytelling. Is a testament to storytelling outside of the original scope of the story. It's a testament to doing something more original. Macross Zero was an origin story that was written so well. There is so much you could do with this story. You got to understand about Macross Plus is that it understood that it was talking about the culture and the impact it has on individuals, which is something that Macross Delta, Macross 7 forgot completely about. And this is just really a step backwards. And that's my review of episode 1. Seriously, people, forget it. It's really not worth it. To be honest with you, I'm going to go down the happy console gamers route when it came to Robotech Academy. Don't support this show. It really is not worth it. It is really, really terrible. It's terrible. It shits on a really tremendous legacy. And I am sick to death of the lack of originality now coming. I'll be honest with you. One of the reasons it's very hard for me to get into new school anime is because it's lacking originality. It's lacking creativity. And what scares me the most right now is that this show is probably going to be semi-popular based on the name brand alone. And that's my review. I'm not sure what else to add. Don't watch the show. I'm sorry, but It Gets Better is not going to work with me. It's going to take a lot for it to get better with this concept, to be honest with you. So, no. I don't know if I could even give it a chance. I'll give episode 2 and 3 a chance. If it doesn't improve in 3 episodes, well, fuck this shit. Until next time, ciao.